Good afternoon for all ladies and gentlemen joining in from India. Good morning, good evening, whichever part of the world you are joining in from. Thank you so much for joining ICF India Conclave Coaching for Growth 2021. My name is Bhaskar Natarajan. I'm a professional certified coach with ICF. I'm privileged to introduce two of the speakers today. They are celebrities of their own kind. They are here to have a dialogue between themselves, where my role would be to bring in questions from you, audience. So please keep your fingers ready to type your questions away on the Q&A section. This is a dialogue on exploring burnout in coaches. As we all know, we are bracing the impact of this pandemic wave after wave. Coaching someone dealing with loss of dear one can often be an intense experience for both the client and the coach. More often, clients may handle emotions in many ways, right? How do we support coach and how coach can prepare themselves in case a client is unexpectedly needing support or deal with loss or associate grief? And more importantly, how coaches can build their own long-term emotional fitness. So this discussion is all about that. I have the privilege of introducing Cindy Muthikarpan. She's a master certified coach. She's joining from South Africa. Hi, Cindy.
Hi, Bakshar.
Cindy is internationally recognized and experienced executive coach, trainer, coach assessor, moderator, mentor coach, and many other identities rolled into one. As I mentioned, she is a MCC. She is regularly invited to speak, lead, and facilitate as a thought leader, and she's a subject matter expert. She was the president of ICF South African chapter in the years 2017-18. She still serves the chapter board as director of credentialing and standards. In the profession of coaching, Cindy's love is to mentor coach for credentialing, and this is where she feels she grows and evolves and become better at her game. She takes quiet time out in a spiritual uplifting ritual of herself. She lives with the South African philosophy of Ubuntu. I am because we are. So, really privileged to have you with us, Cindy. Thank you so much for taking time out to join us.
Thank you, Bakshar. My pleasure being here.
Now it's my turn to introduce our friend Harish Devarajan. He is a corporate executive par excellence, known to many of us from his Unilever days. Currently, he is a leadership coach, consultant, and an author. He owns a company, People Unlimited. He has more than 3 decades of experience in consulting and various corporate assignments. He was a vice president HR when he was with Hindustan Unilever. That's when he decided to be available as a consultant to many more leaders and grow leaders in this space. He told me a very interesting fun fact. He was very active in scouts in India. Most of you would know from this part of the world. This is a service that a student could do to the nation building activity, and he has received the highest order honor by Honorable President of India. It's called President Scout Award. That's a commendable achievement at a very young age. And he says he has been influenced by the Scout promise from the time he was 10 years old. One of the 3 elements of the promise is to help other people at all times. So, really privileged to have you with us, Harish.
Thank
You
you,
have
Bas.
co-authored a top-selling book, HR Here and Now, and you are a fellow alumni from XLRI Jamshedpur. That makes me feel more proud of all the achievements that you have had so far and more to come in your life. Since you are also a MCC with ICF, a lot more insightful discussion I'm expecting from both of you. And the audience have already started placing their questions as soon as they heard the topic burnout, for exploring burnout in coaches. So I would leave the stage between two of you to discuss and bring us your thoughts, inputs, and give us some ideas where we can deal with the situation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bhaskar. Thank you very much. My pleasure and privilege to be here sharing the stage with the one and only Cindy Muthikarpan. Thank you, Cindy, for sharing the stage with me today.
That was going to be my line. I was listening to your short profile and I thought, wow, so that was going to be my line and you just took it from me. But coaches, we're so happy, or attendees, we're so happy to be with you and going to be spending the next hour exploring, discussing, and a little bit of deep diving into the topic of exploring burnout in coaches. And just to do some upfront framing, Harish and I went about, after we knew this, this is a topic we're going to explore with you. We went around asking many coaches, what, are you experiencing burnout? What are you experiencing? Do you know what led to the burnout? So we went around gathering some information and doing some kind of exploring and listening to coaches. Just to expand our own frame of mind. In that curiosity, we also have an awareness that we would like to frame with you. And that is, the topic today is around exploring, talking about, and a special focus on how do we cope moving forward? How do we cope with burnout as coaches? It's not in any way going to be diagnostic. We are not diagnosing. We would leave that to other professionals, So just to let you know that we are more exploring the topic as coaches. When we notice that there is a need for another profession, we would then have a conversation on referral. Harish and I are going to start with exploring the topic of, what is burnout? And Harish, I'm going to hand that over to you.
Yeah, Cindy, absolutely. This is a topic which actually caught me by surprise when they said this is the topic that Cindy and you are going to be conversing on. Because the first thought that came to my mind when I heard this, burnout in coaches, I felt this is an oxymoronic phrase. Coaches? Burnout? I thought people became coaches to enjoy, to be flexible, and to be, satisfied in the work that they do. And how does burnout ever happen there? This was the first thought that struck me. And interestingly, the conversations that I had with many other professional coaches in preparation for this, all of them seem to initially feel the same. There is no burnout at all. Yeah, there is no chance of getting burnt out in the profession of coaching. But actually, when you start digging a little deeper and leave out that phrase burnout and start exploring whether they experience anxiety, they experience any disillusionment, is there any kind of frustrations that they sort of have during the process? Is there moments of helplessness? Then one starts discovering that those do happen once in a while at least. And for some people, it stays for a period of time. And that's when I realized burnout is real. We may not recognize it as burnout, but the components of burnout is definitely there, even in the profession of coaching. Yeah. And I was then became aware of the relevance and the importance of this theme, burnout in coaches. And what about you, Cindy?
Absolutely. Of course, I'm a coach. I am supposed to be, not supposed to be, I love helping, right? And most coaches do. They love to coach, And when not coaching, they'll help out a colleague within the space of coaching. They do a lot of, in inverted commas, helping. And they do it really willingly, happily. It's a happy space. So it's actually quite difficult to recognize signs of becoming burnt out. It's quite easy to dismiss it as, I'm okay, I'm fine, tomorrow's a better day or be another day. And the moment somebody says, can you help me out with so and so? Of course I can. Can we do a session? Of course I can. Clients go, can we meet between sessions? Of course we can. We're very willing to go there without really paying attention to the impact it's having on us. And even if we don't have the time to do it, we will make the time to do so. So, Harish, in exploring this burnout, I began and listening to a lot of coaches talk, listening to myself. I began to figure out, or it was easy to figure out, what is burnout. And it showed up as a state of exhaustion, just exhaustion. And words that came out more associated were 3 types of exhaustion: emotional, physical, and mental. And all this exhaustion and pieces of repeated stress, either excessive or the repeatedness or prolonged stress. And when you put this all together, when it all came together, it felt overwhelming, which eventually led to burnout.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. And Cindy, it's so nice that you presented it in this fashion. Yeah, physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion, which leads to this. And I was looking at this from a different angle, and I was asking myself, what are the kind of reasons or contexts which might push one to this level of anxiety or exhaustion or frustration or disillusionment? And I could come up with about 3 different types of reasons why this might happen. And I would like to call it the 3 M's. And the first M is when we have a very clear monetary goal or a destination to achieve through our coaching practice or through the different things that we do, and we are struggling to sort of achieve that. So the monetary pressures is probably one reason which might push somebody to a level of anxiety and a level of frustration that might turn out to be an enabler for the burnout syndrome. The second M is what I'm calling as the missionary zeal. Many of us coaches and people who are in the people business, people support business, take it up with a missionary zeal to make a difference. I have to make a difference. I must be there for my clients. I hope I'm able to add value to my client. I get a little anxious that the client gets value out of this engagement with me. And that missionary zeal sometimes starts creating inner pressure. And that could be another reason why people move into that burnout zone. And the third one is when they are compelled by mandatory requirements, like I have to follow this process, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Or the client organization wants me to report back, give them some, judgment or assessment of the client. These mandatory requirements sometimes pose additional pressure. That creates an amount of anxiety and stress, and that might push somebody to burnout. So I call this the 3M: the monetary, the missionary, and the mandatory pressures that are related to coaching, which sometimes lead us down this path. And burnout, we don't recognize it, like you rightly said, till we dig a little deeper. It's like the slow creeping condition. You don't become burnt out overnight. It's a slow creeping kind of a syndrome. And it's like the frog in the burning pot, hot water boiling pot. The frog doesn't know that it's going to become unbearable soon. Slowly, the temperature keeps rising till it's too late for the frog to jump out of that pot and it gets burnt there. Yeah. So, burnout in coaches is also something that doesn't happen dramatically, it happens slowly and unrecognizably. And if we are not careful, and if we are not sort of paying attention to what's happening in minuscule and incremental fashion, we might well find ourselves in a state of burnout. That's what I see.
Yeah, it's a beautiful way of rounding it up, Arish, or kind of categorizing something. And, coaches on the call or attendees on the call, type into the chat box what you're noticing around how burnout is showing up for you. We'd love to hear from you too. And Arish, just to pick up on some things you were saying around, having a particular frame and sticking to it, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I recently coached someone who was a colleague. Most of my clients are coaches, so this was a coaching colleague. And who was experiencing a fair amount of anxiety for quite some time around the many, many, many challenges that COVID was throwing into her space. And in the beginning, she raised all those pieces and raised it in a way that, of course, when I reflected back, I said to her, it sounds like there's quite a few things showing up for you, and some of the things you are managing, and some of the things, it seems like you're having some challenges adjusting to. And I threw her off a bit because there was a silence. And then she said, no, I'm a coach. I'm very good with adjusting to anything in my space. And then she said, but for the last 15 minutes, it seems like I told you otherwise. Which then, as we continued, made her pay attention to her own language. And she said she had repeatedly used these words around, I'm so tired, I'm so stressed, I have so much of things to do, I can't cope, which has continued over time, prolonging a space of where she was feeling burnt out. Yeah, so that just occurred to me while you were talking that.
Very, very nice of you to share that, little conversation.
Yeah.
Cindy, the burnout in coaches, as a lot of other coaches keep talking, need not necessarily come from the coaching focused practice.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, our lives are beyond coaching as well. Yeah, there's a life beyond coaching for us. And the pressures, the anxiety, and the cause for burnout could well come from the other elements of our life.
Absolutely.
Our homes, our own support systems, and the inefficiencies there, or the demands from that space could also cause burnout. We might enjoy the coaching thing, and many of us might actually get to the coaching space to get away from the other anxious parts of our lives. But you can't really disappear from there, and those demands are real, and they will have an impact willy-nilly and will cause burnout. We need to recognize it and address it, without which burnout will set in slowly but steadily.
So you're talking about recognizing it, Harish. Maybe it's a good time to go into that space of what are some signs of burnout? Or what includes signs of burnout? And as we talk, we may not discuss all signs, because it's quite contextual. Different people have different experiences. But, we can expand this topic or explore and expand it. Are we okay to do that?
Yeah, sure. And I think you've already alluded to one which your friend seems to have, felt in her own life: tiredness. And I think that's a very obvious one. Yeah, we feel tired, we feel fatigued, we feel a little drained, and this is at the physical level. Yeah, and this might happen because we are just stretching ourselves and doing a lot of things, the volume of work or the volume of things that we are trying to attend to at the same point of time. And this need not be forever, Cindy. I've experienced this. There are periods of time in my life I can recognize when everything seemed to happen at the same time. In a month or two, so many different things had to be attended to. You had your coaching assignments. Actually, that was the time when I was also preparing for my MCC certification. So there was a lot of work to be done on that front. Yeah,
of course.
And it happened to be the time when I was researching for my book as well. So there was added pressure of completing some things, writing up chapters. And to top it all, I was having the need to travel to another city to meet up with a friend. And it was an emergency situation and I couldn't postpone that. And all of this, I kept doing it. I did not, for a moment feel stressed because I was in the throes of that. But at the end of that month and a half, I was so hooked up that next couple of weeks, I couldn't really stir out of my hole. I was drained so much. And that's when I realized that when we are in it, we probably don't recognize it because we're enjoying it. We are probably driven by the need to do it, complete it. But it's having an impact and effect. So I was feeling tired. I was not getting sleep. And I was sort of, mind was continuously worrying about all of these things. But I sort of pushed it aside. But when I look back now, those are probably symptoms that given me the cue.
And Harish, to that example that you're saying, did you notice as you were, experiencing these everyday symptoms of I have too much to do, at any point were you reflecting on, what's going on, or what am I experiencing, or do I need to change anything? Were you ever in that space, or was it just a go, go, go?
Unfortunately, Cindy, I'm somebody who gets immersed in the moment. And I, in fact, try and enjoy it as much as I can. But this was one time when I realized that I had probably pushed myself too much. And now, having gone through it, I can relate to it if it had to happen again. Yeah. So now with the hindsight, if I were to feel tired day after day, and if I was not getting sleep and my mind was not shutting down, I would now ask myself, why is this happening? Is there something that I can do about it? Yeah. So it's a hindsight wisdom, as I would call it. Yeah. But that is only the physical part of it, Cindy. Yeah. And I want to ask you, and you have been in the coaching space for long, and you actually engage in not just coaching people, you mentor people, you actually supervise individuals, You volunteer
Yeah.
yourself for a lot of coaching related events. Have you felt this kind of tiredness and fatigue, not just from the physical activity, but
Hmm.
from a mental or an emotional involvement? Have you experienced that, Asim?
Yeah, in my 16 years as a professional coach, yes, I have quite a few times. But I'm going to talk about a recent one. When the pandemic started, or when we started going into lockdowns and um, isolation periods, it was a whole new space and a whole new experience of social isolation or social distancing. So, no more coffee get together with coaches and no more like, all those spaces where you get a certain amount of support and excitement and, like a sense of community belonging. Yeah. So, what happened for me when that period started was noticing how many people needed a bit of extra support. And happy me jumped into the occasion, like, of course, I can do everything. Um, want a conversation with me? Yes, of course, I can do that. So a lot of people go, Cindy, here we talk? And I go, of course, we can. Whether I have the time or not, didn't matter. And Arish, in all that doing and saying yes, a big part of me I neglected, which was my being space and how I took care of me. Now, I've got to also say this. There was a big need. Taking care of me included taking care of others. That showed up as a bigger need. Of course, months later, I learned a valuable lesson around that it should be some kind of a balance. But again, as you said, it was an hindsight thing. And I felt this was the analogy that showed up for me. You know that old saying of love is blind? I felt I was so in love with what I was doing. I had so many blind spots that even though others were pointing it out to me, I just wouldn't listen.
So
Because I
beautiful.
thought, no, coaches, we can cope, right?
Absolutely. Wonderful. Wonderful. So beautiful, Cindy. And this is making me think now, Cindy, you know, different people have got different approaches and styles to their engagement with others.
Yeah.
Some of us, I can definitely speak for myself, I begin with a cognitive approach. And then I slowly start getting into understanding their situation and then appreciating their challenges and helping them sort of talk about it, exploring it, and figuring it out. So, largely, it's a cognitive driven kind of an engagement. But I know that there are coaches, and I recognize this in you, Cindy, people who engage through their heart. Yeah, it's a very empathetic kind of a style of relating to people.
Yeah.
And what the episode that you just shared brings that alive so much. And when you have that empathetic driven engagement, and you have a lot of that happening,
Yeah.
and there is a big demand on that empathy during that relationship, I'm sure it sort of creates a drain. And
Mm.
it could, what you're like you're be saying, you're giving so much of it. Are you conscious of what it's doing to you while you're giving? And if you're
Yeah.
giving back to back, day after day, to multiple people who are all having that big need for empathetic relating conversations, where does it leave you? Is that something
Absolutely.
that we need to get, sort of conscious of?
Yeah. And as you say, it's important that we kind of recognize, firstly, there's a denial to it, right? There's a denial. And it's only in hindsight do you then figure out how to recognize signs. It is only thereafter, and then you begin to go, now I'm noticing I'm doing a bit too much. So where can I stop? Or where can I draw my own boundaries? So one of the biggest things I noticed, even in engaging with other coaches, listening to their stories, is not that they were not good in boundaries, but within the space of giving and doing too much, the boundaries are blurred for the giving. So instead of the combination of doing both, like taking care of myself and giving for others, boundaries become blurred. And in that blurred space, it's easy to continue until the point where you go, oh, I can't do this anymore. Then you got to stop, recognize, and do some readjusting. But it's such a fine line, Harish, right?
And Cindy, you are such an experienced coach, and you have been at this for so many years, and you are saying it's a fine line and it's a difficult one. And I can well imagine people who are coming into coaching, new, and are really taken up by the opportunity to be there for others and do so much, gaining satisfaction through that process, may not be aware that this could well happen. And it's something that I think we must sort of share with people, even as they get trained and certified to be coaches, that this is a reality. This is something that people need to look out for. Yeah. I know that there are some professions like the nursing or counseling where they actually help people prepare for such an eventuality because they recognize that to be a reality.
Yeah.
But in coaching, I don't think that level of awareness has arisen as yet. People think that no, coaches don't have to worry about this. This won't happen. Yeah. But the current COVID situation, you know what, has sort of brought to light a very different reality for coaches.
Yeah.
We are all the time at home in the last 1.5 years, yeah, and glued to our screens, and we are doing coaching virtually. We are doing engagement with our friends and family virtually. We are learning and reading and picking up things virtually. We are networking with the professional bodies virtually. Everything is through the screen. And that is taking a toll. And now suddenly, we are now beginning to realize, do coaches also get fatigued? Can they get burnt out? Not realizing that even without this virtual world, it could very well happen if we are not careful as to how we approach it and how we learn to take care of ourselves at the simultaneous space.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely spot on. How do we recognize that for ourselves in our profession, right? And I feel like that new core competency coaching mindset talks to it. Because, how do you mentally and emotionally prepare for sessions? How do you, have this ongoing learning mindset? How do you keep into a more grounded space, more mindful of what's going on with you as the coach? I think that talks to the point you just made with other professions having some kind of a space for setting boundaries around wellness. I think having a coaching mindset or giving ourselves that reminder every now and again to do a check-in with ourselves on how we are managing creates this open space for a conversation that's otherwise difficult or easy to ignore.
Very interesting. Cindy, it's so the wellness part, yeah, we just sort of brush it aside saying, yeah, I'm doing well and I can do this. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, if the coach is experiencing early burnout signs and is not aware of it, and not because of the coaching process, but because of their life that they are experiencing, and they
Yeah.
come into this coaching engagement without being aware of it, the way they relate, the way they are present, the way they are actually engaging could very well get influenced with their not being well. The early signs of burnout could have a negative impact and influence in the way they relate to their clients. Is that possible?
Yeah, because if we are effective and well, we'll coach in that way, right? We'll show up well for our clients. Yeah, absolutely. What you're saying, it is quite possible. This whole space of wellness, it's quite possible to neglect yourself in this space without really knowing it because you love what you're doing. And you'll convince yourself that tomorrow will be a better day and I'll manage it tomorrow. That's one of the early signs of burnout is when you don't care about yourself. It's like you are this executive leadership coach, lots of clients in a high-powered space, but you begin to lose the ability of caring for things that you normally care about in yourself. And I wonder, Arish, if you have client experience or maybe own experience around self-care.
Cindy, I shared with you the kind of experience I went through when I realized in hindsight that I was doing. That actually
Yeah,
rang some alarm bells for me. And I started
yeah,
asking myself, how am I engaging with things? And then I realized there are days when I have back to back coaching sessions, 3 sessions, one after another. And this invariably happens when you are actually asked to come to the client's office for coaching engagements, and they are trying to
yeah,
also, optimize, and I'm also trying to optimize, reduce the amount of travel that I need to do, and then you have back-to-back coaching sessions, and that has its own negative, issues around it. You finish a session, and even before you can unwind, you're into the next one, and it's a completely different kind of context and different situation, different needs. And by the time you're finished with it, not even a coffee break, and you're into the next one. Terrible, terrible thing. You try to be present there, but you are doing disservice to yourself by packing in so much into such a short time. And I started really feeling, and now end of the 3 sessions, you're driving home, and it looks like as if you ran a marathon. Yeah, you're tired. You just want to go and relax. And I realized this, and I said, why is this happening? It's to do with stamina, it's to do with concentration, it's also to do with bad planning. I said, what can I do about it? I said,
yeah,
definitely I can plan better, but equally, I need to take care of my health. And therein started a journey for me with renewed vigor, which I've never done in the last 50 years of my life, though it was a dream, to get into
yeah.
better shape physically so that I can be mentally sharper and emotionally better. And Cindy, it's worked. With a lot of effort, it's worked. And now that I
Wow.
feel healthier physically, I'm able to bear with greater emotional stress and not get so fatigued that easily. And I think they're all linked. Physical stamina and emotional stamina, they are integrated in some fashion, and both are equally important.
Yeah. So it sounds like something happened in the mindset to form a new practice, a new habit, or a new way of doing things. Yeah.
Yes. It starts in the mind, yeah, and then it flows into your action and practice.
Yeah.
And
Bakshit.
May I jump in here, Cindy and
Yeah,
Harish?
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, really enjoying this conversation. I was reflecting on a quote which I heard very long ago in my coaching journey, way back in 2008. Who you are is how you coach. And especially in the supervision circles, it's very much famous. Who you are is how you coach. So I was just connecting back to what Harish you mentioned on the mission mode. When a coach is in a mission mode, I want to provide more value, right? My
Yeah.
mission in my life is to connect with more people and impact more population. Even a minute if I waste, it means I'm not reaching out to people. So my schedule, my calendar is so full, I can't say no to anybody, and I keep saying yes to any request that comes to my way, and I have a scheduling nightmare. Obviously, it's a path towards the burnout. So perhaps the root cause could be to reflect on who am I as a coach. And the second point is not all of us have coaching as the only means of, say, livelihood. We do
Yes.
consulting, we do training, we do other areas. What if anxiety and fear of missing out from other identities that we carry is spilling over here? Right, so these two thoughts came to my mind, and I look at the chat and many of them are asking for, give me tips, give me ideas,
Yeah.
give me actionable things that worked for you. So I leave it
Yeah.
to both of you to respond. How do we handle this now that we are aware of it? Let's take action and also move towards the accountability to say, I will commit to these simple steps from this day forward.
Yep.
thanks,
Thank you,
Bharat.
Bakshit, and thank you to our attendees. The last 20 minutes of our call is going to be spent on Arish and I talking about the how-tos and support network and resources that we can draw from. So,
Yeah. No, no, absolutely, Cindy. I think that's that is very clearly what people are also wanting. Yeah, it's good to know that people are aware, people are able to connect with this thing of burnout or burnout elements in their lives, thanks to coaching or thanks to outside of coaching life. Yeah, but it's there. How do we handle this? What do we do? Yeah, and like I said, the physical wellness is something that is very, very fundamental and important, and we cannot ignore it. And I think I
yeah,
have ignored it for long. I have realized it and learnt it the hard way that it's an
yeah,
important foundation. Physical wellness is an important element to be emotionally present and alive and not getting burnt out in the process of our lives.
yeah, absolutely. So, coaches, or attendees, let's talk a bit more about strategies to build our own resilience, our own noticing and awareness on how to prevent burnout. And, as coaches, we are quite good with asking these challenging, thought provoking questions to clients. We are quite good in also creating spaces where there's time for reflection and time for thinking in the way we offer that to the client. So, one of the things we could do for ourselves is take the same strategies we offer to client and implement for ourselves. Meaning, one way, create a space where you give yourself time out, a quiet, reflective space where you begin to ask yourself or ponder on these questions that are playing as stressful, challenging, or maybe overwhelming. Give yourself the space to think about that. And think about it in the way we coach, meaning, this is my current reality. What can I do about it? Or how can I expand this into new thinking, new options, new ideas? And more importantly, don't just stop there. Walk that path. So if you decide to try something new for yourself, give yourself this chance to walk that path. Then you would be cultivating this kind of growth mindset within the space of stress, anxiety, and overwhelm.
Absolutely. Carving a me time, whatever works, like mindfulness, yoga, or like Harish, you mentioned the fitness activities that we fit in, and then
Yeah,
combining that with a journal on what I'm experiencing right now.
yeah.
That's a very
So,
interesting thing that you're talking about, Bhaskar and Cindy. This thing about reflecting that you've said,
yeah,
I found that in a lot of engagement, a lot of reflection that happens during the engagement, but not so much after. And I'm talking about for the coach.
yeah,
And I think it may be a good one for coaches as they unwind from a session to reflect on not only what happened in the session and what the coachee has taken out of that, and where is the coachee now, and where could the coachee go. Equally important for us after the session to pay a little attention to what's the new thing that I've learned about myself as a coach. How has this session impacted me?
yeah,
New learnings and new reflections and new sensing about myself and how I respond. And I think that deep awareness is an important reflection that we need to do, and maybe maintaining a little journal. And we start seeing, is this something that I'm noticing? Is this
Absolutely.
something that I need to pay attention to?
Also, yeah,
If we don't pay attention to ourselves, we tell this to a lot of our clients. Yeah. So are you aware? Are you reflecting? Are you in deep touch with yourself?
right.
I think we need to ask ourselves the same question. Are we in deep touch with
Yeah.
ourselves and our innermost happenings?
Take the medicine that we prescribe. And the way it works
absolutely.
is these days I have seen many coaches are tech savvy. They have calendar apps integrated into their websites and mailboxes and so on. It'll be wiser to keep a gap between two sessions and introduce a algorithm or a rule saying do not fix any assignments 45 minutes after the previous one ends. That is when the
Yeah,
reflection, the journaling, all of these could happen. uh, and I was reflecting on the morning session on sports coaching where the panelists spoke about having obsession towards process excellence and not outcome excellence.
yeah,
We are so hung up on clients to get value, or they should appreciate each session, they should give a thumbs up saying fantastic session today, and we chase that as a goal rather than stick to our process, make sure that we are not missing out anything by sticking to the process, to the basics. That's another tip for all of us. I'm talking about myself as well. Whenever I feel the urge to do extra, go the extra mile to please my client, I ask myself, why am I doing this? Right?
yeah,
What is the need inside me that gets fulfilled, so that I'm over reaching to my client where it is not necessary at all.
yeah, absolutely. And coaches, I think it's quite important to also create for yourself. Coaching is a profession and a working day. What is your working day? Ask yourself, what is my working day? How many hours do I want to work? And take your lunch breaks, take your tea breaks, or whatever breaks you need to, as if you were going to work. Because the environment has changed. Most of us are working on Zoom or at home. It's very easy to ignore your breaks and continue working for extended hours. Take your breaks, and most importantly, all those life things that you love doing. And if you stop doing it, start by including at least two into your day. Doesn't have to be big rituals, but it could be those small things that you love doing and you haven't for a while, like your gym activity because gyms are closed. have a growth mindset, as I spoke about earlier on. Figure out what other ways can I do gymming from home or exercising and include it in your day. Make it a part of your day. So, work life balance is not a concept. Begin to implement it for yourself.
Very nice. Cindy, this is also making me think what else do I do and I see other coaches do to sort of handle this kind of an obsessive focus on coaching and coaching performance and, adding value and all of these things. There are a couple of things that I see a lot of coaches around me doing, yeah, and they do it very well. One is to have a peer network of coaches to share not the stories or the subjects of your coaching, but the style and the implications and the fallout of engaging in coaching. Yeah, and it needs to be a buddy group, a close group with which you are able to openly share and talk about how you're feeling and what you're going through and learn from each other. The learning sharing kind of a buddy group helps quite well. Yeah, and we have done this at different points in time, but I think this is very important. Equally, mentoring and supervision. A lot of
Yes,
coaches
awesome.
feel, I'm good. I don't need a mentor coach now. That was at an early stage, but not now. I'm now arrived and I don't need to be mentored. Yeah. I don't need to be supervised. I
Yeah,
think it is not to teach us anything new, but to be able to make us reflect and learn from our own process of being, doing, that that mentoring and supervision becomes so very important. And
yeah,
I think we must all be aware of the need for this for our own wellness and for our own effectiveness. This is what I
Absolutely,
think.
Harish. Even a kitchen knife needs sharpening from time to time. Yeah, two more thoughts. One is blocking time for important events. Out of 52 weeks, I think all 52 weeks, one need not, keep it as a billable time with client. 2 weeks, we can take it as a chunk for family or taking vacation. And also make sure that after a cutoff time during the day or in the evening, there will be no coaching engagements. That time will be devoted for family or friends, catching up with the social network, either on online or offline. So when we block time for specific activities, I think we are giving ourselves permission to wind down rather than burn out.
No,
yeah,
interesting. You bring this up, Bhaskar. My experience is slightly different. Yeah, so I speak for myself, and I speak for a lot of coaches whom I see. I don't think we burn ourselves out so physically by being engaged 52 weeks. In fact, a lot of us would be happy if we can get a couple of more weeks of engagement. That's the reality in the demand and supply situation.
exactly.
Okay. But what
Hmm.
is, however, important is when do we agree and accept to actually engage? Just because the client is pushing hard, sometimes we say, okay, I'm okay to meet you on a Saturday evening or a Sunday morning. I'm okay to meet you at 10:30 my time, 10:30 p.m. my time. We sometimes get pushed into those corners. And like what Cindy referred earlier, are giving and wanting to be there, guilt and the pressure of that, we say yes to it. I think that
Mhm.
adds to our pressures and our anxiety. Yeah. So it may not be 2 weeks in a
True.
year that you need to take off, but I think
Absolutely.
every day and every engagement, is it the right, mutually right time for us to engage? I think that's an important question to ask.
Perhaps both. And
Yeah,
Puneet, from our audience, he also shares a very important aspect. How do we maximize engagement and also detachment? Difficult, but works wonders.
yeah, absolutely. The detachment part is a difficult part because what are you detaching from? And if you're detaching and creating the space for something else, what is that something else you want more of?
Hmm.
So you kind of, it's that balance, right? The detachment and what do you want more of? What are you letting go of? What do you want more? And I'm mindful of time, so I want to say this because I know there's many coaches here. Coaches, if you're experiencing anxiety and stress about not knowing what to do within the growth of the profession of coaching, your growth, meaning credentialing, training, how much of training to do, when to do it, how to balance it. As Harish said, there are many mentors and supervisors around, coach supervisors. Have conversations with them. Have conversations to your credentialing body instead of sitting with, I don't know what to do. I'm not sure and I don't know. That also is compounding stress.
True.
Any other coping mechanisms that we need to pick up on, Arish? What do you think?
So
Sorry, Baksh.
one other thing which I see as very helpful and useful is, when you look around coaches, they are at different points in time in their life journey. A lot of us are probably doing this as a second innings. Yeah, we've worked in a corporate sector, we've achieved, and then we are coming, now we are in the giving mode, and then we come here. I see a lot of youngsters coming into coaching as well. Yeah, or wanting to come in here and make a mark as a coach. That's their first innings. Yeah. And there are others who have actually done everything and things like that. I'm saying, I'm doing this as a hobby. Yeah, it's not even an innings for me. Yeah, it's a hobby. Now, depending on which part of your life journey you are, your needs and your expectations are very different. And that has a bearing in terms of how you cope with it. Okay. And especially for people who are getting into this either as a first innings or second innings, I would say if they have a couple of different elements in their portfolio, it helps them to balance the pressures and the anxieties and the stress which they're feeling in one part of the portfolio versus another. And when I say portfolio, it need not all be revenue earning stuff. Yeah, it's even being a good family member is a portfolio, and we need to recognize that. Yeah, so I call it the pizza of my life. It's got different slices, and each slice has got its purpose. And I must know that there are multiple slices, and each slice needs to be tasted and savored. And if I'm able to manage that balance, and rather than just be focused on one slice and make it a single slice pizza, I think I'm then giving myself up for a burnout syndrome sooner rather than later.
Yeah, we choke off our own pizza.
Yeah. And of course, coaches, this topic is quite a broad one with multi layers. We've only touched the surface of many things. I'm hoping that you walk away and do some kind of curiosity and digging around for yourself if you are managing any anxiety that could lead to burnout. And of course, a bit of advice, be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
You show up there for your clients with highest positive regard for your client. Do the same for yourself. And if you're not, then figure out little ways on how you can show up with the highest positive regard for yourself.
On that note, Cindy, there are many comments and questions on this aspect. I just want to display one from Rekha. What stops coaches from seeking help, either getting coached or talking to a counselor when feeling burnt out? There are many sentiments similar to that. What is stopping us? We are supposed to be the experts. There's a myth saying coaches cannot get sick, like doctors cannot get sick. So yeah, possible. So what is stopping us from reaching out to a professional for help? When we advocate that everyone should reach a professional, not a quack, why can't we do that to ourselves? That's a common sentiment I see in many of the questions. Any thoughts from Harish and Cindy before we move to a closure of this discussion?
So I think,
Arish, you want to take that?
yeah, let me. I think a lot of us have gone through this, and we feel that we have arrived and we don't need help. Asking for help is a sign of weakness, and we see this and we tell them not to do it. Yeah, I think it is time that we turn the mirror towards ourselves. We hold the mirror for the client quite often. I think it's time that we turn the mirror to look into it ourselves and ask ourselves, are we really not needing help? Are we there that we don't need any support? Can't we be better with some kind of hand holding? I think we need to do that. I think a little bit of humility and a little bit of vulnerability and looking into the mirror will help us all.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Harish. Cindy?
Burnout and anxiety is not a job requirement in coaching. It's not. We are human beings and we also have same or similar experiences as other human beings. So, in recognizing burnout and anxiety, we don't need to do a detachment from it. Go there. Recognize it when it's showing up in you so that you can manage it.
Thank you, Cindy. While researching on this topic, preparing for this session, I came across some self assessment tool for helping professionals to assess whether we are getting burnt out or not. So please do take use of such instruments for yourself, not only for the client. That would help. And ending with a quote: "Deprived cannot provide." When we are deprived of mental peace and wellness and wholeness, the whole pizza of all the slices that we have, life has to offer, we won't be able to available make ourselves available to a client, the whole self. So I think
Yeah.
self care, making sure that we are not deprived of all the wellness and wholesome being that we want our client to succeed in their life. We need to succeed in ours first. So, with that, thank you so much for this opportunity. We are on the top of the hour. Cindy and Harish, your presence really made us reflect, take us to a place where we need to do some kind of adjustment in our life. My mentor coach in embodiment coaching, she was asked a question saying, "How do you balance yourself? I see yourself balance all the time." And her guru seems have told her a secret: "I correct myself before anyone could spot."
Mm.
Right? So I think it's time for us to hold the mirror for ourselves and correct ourselves, stay balanced, stay wholesome for the benefit of our clients and their progress, so that the society can thrive and flourish because of coaching and coach contribution. Thank you, everyone.